Do we want to have a border that protects our citizens? Do we want to ship our jobs to China or keep them right here in America for American workers and the American people?
Take 5 to 10 million people and you introduce them into a country over 2 years, and you're talking about you increase the demand for housing because those 5 to 10 million people need housing, while at the same time the supply of housing is relatively inelastic. So with that in mind, there are a couple pieces of research that we've sort of been looking at just as I focus on this particular issue. You do see very predictable increases in housing costs and rents when you have mass immigration into a country, into a metro area, even into a county. Combine that increase in rents and increase in housing costs with another unusual component of the effect on mass immigration and housing costs, and it's that in the neighborhood where you have the highest inflow of immigration, you also have declining home prices. So if you take those two pieces of evidence together, what you basically get is rich people who have homes in low immigration areas benefit from our mass immigration policies, and everybody else finds the American dream of home ownership further and further away because we've effectively invited 5 to 10 million people into our country to break our laws. I think that we talk too much about this, not that the law enforcement component doesn't matter, not that the fentanyl overdoses don't matter, they matter a great deal to the people of Ohio. We cannot, as a country, absorb 10 million people and still provide high-quality housing to the rest of our citizens. It just doesn't, the math doesn't work, the numbers don't make sense. The increase in housing prices and rents is clear for all to see.
Joe Biden opened up the floodgates. He implemented over 90 executive orders at the beginning of his administration that were meant to open the border. He and his Secretary of Homeland Security, they bragged about it. They said they were undoing the Trump border policies, and now 3 years later, we're living with the disaster of it. We just go back to this terrible murder of Laken Riley, who was killed doing what young kids just do. She was out exercising, enjoying her life, and she was brutally murdered by someone who shouldn't have been here. That person was paroled by the Biden administration. And I have to say, Maria, it's not just a radical departure from the Trump border policies. It's in some ways a radical departure from the Obama border policies. Barack Obama paroled about 5,000 illegal aliens per year. Joe Biden is paroling close to 1 million per year, including the person who brutally murdered Laken Riley. Joe Biden has every tool at his disposal to end the border crisis tomorrow. So what we're trying to do with this law is constrain his discretion and force him to do the job that he refuses to do. We're trying to force the president to do what he already could do under existing legal authority. And yet every single provision of this legislation, or nearly every provision of this legislation, allows either Secretary Mayorkas or the President of the United States to waive the enforcement mechanisms. How do you square these things? How do you say we've got to force the president to do a job, and yet we're passing a border bill that allows the president to waive every single authority that the bill gives him? We do not need to give Joe Biden more tools. We do not need to give Joe Biden a border security bill, which is really, as Roger Marshall said, a Ukraine first bill masquerading as a border security bill. What we need to do is pass legislation that forces Joe Biden to do his job, restrains his discretion, constrains his discretion, not give him more authority to run and around the laws that we have in this country.
I didn't think it was legal, Senator, to axe American workers and hire en masse illegal aliens.
Well, it shouldn't be, Jesse, and we're certainly going to look into whether we can change that, assuming Tyson is operating legally, which we don't even know if they are. We don't know the details of this. All we know, Jesse, is that they are firing American workers and hiring illegal aliens to replace them. This is the entire point of illegal immigration, and Republicans, we've got to hammer this point home. It reduces the wages of American workers by replacing American citizens with foreign laborers who are willing to work at slave wages. It has been the plan, as you said, from the beginning, and what this means is the eradication of the American dream. Every time an American is replaced with an illegal immigrant, it means that an American family loses a good family supporting wage. It means that American companies are literally replacing our own citizens with people who will work for slave wages. That is not capitalism or a market economy, Jesse. That is the decimation of the American American middle class via illegal immigration, and it's happening all over the country. California has between 3 and 5 congressional seats that it shouldn't have. Why? Because the census counts illegal aliens when it hands out congressional representatives. So when you import millions of people into this country illegally, you're actually destroying the American people's power and their own democracy. You're taking away congressional representation from American citizens and giving it to illegal aliens. The executive has broad discretion to enforce our border laws. Now, we have to remember that 3.5 years ago, Joe Biden came into the Oval Office, and what were they doing? They were bragging about undoing the previous administration's border policies. They were bragging about expanding catch and release. They were bragging about ending remain in Mexico. They were bragging about changing the asylum enforcement laws in this country. And every single one of us said, what you're going to get is a crisis at the southern border. And after 3.5 years of them bragging about a policy change and then seeing the predictable results, we now have a historic crisis, I would say historic invasion at our southern border.